So we've just discussed title search. And Paige, you mentioned in that about you then go and you issue a title evidence. So explain what that definition really means to the buyer and the process in getting that done.
Another great question, Lisa. Title evidence can be one of a couple of things. What's usually customary in Florida, what we see the most of the time as title evidence, is going to be in the form of a title commitment. And that's what we issue after we've done the title search, that, like we were talking about. So title evidence we'll see most of the time as the title commitment, but it could also be the seller's current owner's title insurance policy. If that seller has an owner's title insurance policy, you can look in your contract and sit down with your agent and talk about that. A lot of times the contract will actually define what is title evidence, and it may give you an option for a title commitment or a seller's owner's title insurance policy.
And so if I were the buyer, would it be safe for me as the buyer to just assume that the current owner, the seller, has an owner's title policy? And could that in any way benefit me?
It could benefit you as the buyer. Most sellers don't realize that they have the title insurance policy. Like I said, I love title insurance. It is such an important, critical part of the transaction, but a lot of times it is one of those things that gets put away, filed away, and kind of forgotten. So it's really kind of a rarity for a seller to produce an owner's title insurance policy when it comes time for closing. So, but if the seller does have it, it could benefit the buyer in that if the seller bought the home within the last 3 years, the buyer could be eligible for what's called a reissue credit or a reissue rate on their new title policy if provided with a copy of that current policy. The rates in Florida are what they call promulgated. They're set by the insurance commissioner. They've been the same since 1999. We have not had a rate increase. But within those guidelines, they say if someone has bought a home within the last 3 years and they bought a title policy, you can give a reissue credit to the new purchaser, which is a very valuable savings to the buyer, and it would save a home buyer quite a bit of money on their purchase.
Or it could actually benefit the seller depending on how that contract was written. If the seller is the one in negotiations that agreed to pay the owner's title policy on behalf of the buyer, it could actually benefit the seller as well for that reissue credit.
Absolutely. That's an excellent point. It can be a cost savings to the seller as well. Great point. And it can also be a time saver too. If we have that prior title policy, it gives us a starting point that we can kind of pull forward from in the title search. Typically we would do a full title search because, like I said, those prior policies are sometimes hard to find. But it is nice to have that. It is nice to see what was done previously.